Okay guys, I'm having a rough English day, but we're gonna try this again. I already tried filming this video once about like 30 minutes ago. We're gonna hope that for some reason my English is better. Hey y'all, I am back and I have more of your paranormal stories that I'm super nervous to read. I picked out 3 long stories, which I feel like is going to be the death of me right now. So we're gonna get through 2 and we're gonna see what happens. I'm gonna hop right in. This first story is from someone, we've read a lot of their stories and they're always terrifying. So this says, I should have known these friends weren't gonna lead me anywhere good. Hey, Cleo here, they them pronouns. Posted a few months back and I'm re-binge watching Court's videos. I just finished watching the video of her reading my cemetery experience and was giggling at her saying that that would be the scariest thing to ever happen to her. I wasn't lying. I had one other experience with the same group of friends that was somehow even worse and thought I would share it. It'll be another long one, so buckle up, grab a snack, and I hope y'all enjoy. I first want to, this is where I was struggling. You're gonna see there's a lot of big words in this paragraph. I want to first preface this with a little bit of info about where this took place. The Sunbury Asylum was old, like 1800s kind of old, and had been a variety of things, starting out as an industrial school and an institutionalized home for delinquent or neglected children. That took me one go. I'm not kidding, I think I reread that 45 times before and I was like, I couldn't do institutionalized. I just couldn't do it. It became an asylum in 1879 and had horrible overcrowding and terrible conditions for most of the time it was open. This happened a couple months after the cemetery experience in early October. And then the way that they do their friends' names, they just do the beginning letter. So I'm gonna try to really emphasize that because sometimes I feel like when I'm editing these videos and people just use the first letter of their name, it gets kind of confusing. So if I'm like M, E, like that's why. E and I were hanging out at her house again, mucking around and showing each other songs we liked and smoking. E got a call from T asking if we wanted to hang out and go for an adventure. I'd gotten a little closer with the group, but still didn't like the nefarious tones to their ideas of an adventure. But E didn't want our hang to end, so I caved and M picked us up. Race cars. Race cars! We drove around for a couple of hours and stopped to smoke up at a local sesh spot in my hometown when L, the ever moron of the group, suggested we go check out the asylum and smoke up there. Everyone was kind of off about the idea of smoking up there, but still wanted to go check it out. M smugly told us that he knew of a way to get inside one of the buildings, which swayed the others, and off we went. I should have dipped then. God only knows why I didn't. It took us less than 15 minutes to arrive in front of the looming red brick buildings that made up the asylum, and it was completely dark outside by the time we got there. I was shivering, but I wasn't cold, and a huge part of me wanted to just wait in the car. But the idea of being locked inside a car, alone, in the dark, at a well-known haunted asylum car park was absolutely so not the vibe, so along I went. We followed M around to the back of the administration building, ducking to hide from a security guard that patrolled the area. M led us to a broken window on the ground floor that had all of the glass knocked out of it. T went in first, followed by E, myself, L, and M last. We walked around the first floor for a bit before L pulled out a folded sheet of paper and a shot glass out of his pocket and revealed a crudely drawn Ouija board. Shut the fuck up. I should have, throttled him in that moment, but instead just raised my hands in a surrender and backed away, vigorously shaking my head no. The others shrugged as I sat down in the middle of the foyer and began using the shot glass like a planchette. I rolled my eyes and I decided I would go for a wander upstairs. There was a grand staircase just left to where the others were hanging out, which led up to the second floor. I ambled up there and walked past a couple of the darkest rooms, not wanting to go in with just the torch from my phone lighting my way. Further along the walkway was a steep set of stairs, practically a ladder to the attic of the building. Looking up, I saw 2 thick chains hung across the door with an even thicker lock clicked shut and holding the chains together in the middle. I continued forward and poked my head into the room next to the ladder and noticed some papers on the floor that I went over to inspect. Not even a minute later, I heard a loud thump on the floorboards just outside of the room and jumped about a foot in the air. Walking back outside the room, my foot kicked something hard. I looked down and saw a lock. The lock from the attic door, the one that was just locked tight a moment ago. I bent down and noticed a gouge in the floorboards that the edge of the lock fit perfectly into, as if someone had thrown the lock with a decent amount of force from its usual home. Looking up, the chains sat open, hanging limply on either side of the now open door that was abso-fucking-lutely shut when I first looked at it. I don't want to read this! Now, I have no idea what on earth possessed me, for lack of a better term, to investigate, but I made the slow and heart-pounding ascent up those steep-ass stairs and stopped in the doorway, having to duck slightly to avoid hitting my head on the roof. I looked inside the attic and was met with essentially one big room that had partitions that broke it up into 3 areas. The The area to my left and directly in front of me was mostly empty and covered in thick layers of dust, with only some boxes, papers, and a chair with no seat scattered to the left. The right, however, was missing the main part of its floor and had a wooden plank thrown across it as a makeshift walkway. But that wasn't what caught my attention and turned my blood cold. No. What shook me to my core was the woman standing on the other end of the plank of wood. She was dressed in an old-fashioned hospital gown with long black hair. Picture the girl from The Ring that hung down her back in thick, matted tendrils, and she was sort of hunched forward. I froze. Every hair on my body was standing on end, every instinct in me telling me to get the figgity fuck out of there, and I couldn't oblige. I could hear my friends hooting and hollering below me, but when I tried to scream, only a squeak came out. Unfortunately for me, that squeak was enough to alert the woman to my presence, and she spun around, showing ashen skin and sunken black voids where her eyes should have been. She began walking towards me at an alarmingly fast pace. I unfroze and practically fell backwards on my ass at the bottom. Breathing so fucking hard and shaking like a leaf, I cast my phone torch up towards the door to make sure she wasn't still advancing on me and felt sick to my stomach when I saw the lock. The one I'd noted, the one that had left a gouge in the floorboards from its fall, was back in place, locked tight and holding the chains in place over the closed attic door. I managed to get to my feet and tore ass out of there, barely stopping to tell the others that we needed to get the absolute hell out of there. I practically flew down to the car and was hyperventilating by the time the others got there too. I refused to tell them what had happened until we were away from the asylum and somewhere well lit. We ended up at McDonald's and no one disputed my story or made fun of me for it. They told me they kept getting one spirit on the Ouija board no matter how many times they said goodbye and tried again. Zozo. There we have it. Hope it wasn't too long and that y'all enjoy it. Please let me know if you'd like any more stories. I hope you have a great day, night. Much love to you all. You have the craziest fucking stories. And if you have more, you have to share them. Because every time I read your stories, I'm like, this is gonna haunt me for the rest of my life. Like there's no part of me that can process anything that I just read. Nothing. That does not. Oh my god, I'm like falling out of my chair. This next story says, severely haunted with dangerous spirits. Hello, I'm Teddy, an 18-year-old from Germany. Firstly, this is going to be long. Excuse my English as well. I'm German. But I feel it's necessary for me to get this out there because nobody knows about this story besides my family. And even to this day, my mom was a skeptic, which I don't understand how. So, might as well start from the beginning. When I was 6, we moved into an old house. Probably one of the first houses built in my town. It was that old. I can't remember much of what happened till I got older, around 12 years old. So I'll start there. I discovered a name engraved into the paint in my bedroom wall that was never there before. When I noticed it, I couldn't make it out, so I ignored it. It wasn't until months after discovering the name that I started to experience odd things. My mom also discovered the name, and we both found out it was Adam. I'd always feel watched after discovering this name. Anywhere I went. Didn't matter where it was, what I was doing, the presence was always there. We stayed in that house for years. I honestly can't remember when we moved. But this is where the story takes a severe dark turn, and the part it gets scary. And to this day, I can't explain it. Years later, when I was about 13, we moved into, again, an old house. This house was different. The previous family went into debt and couldn't take care of the house, so they had to get rid of it, which is what happened to us, but I'll get into that later in the story. The first night I felt evil. Pure evil. This Adam ghost was still with me, and I didn't realize till I went to a trusted psychic and we found out he was like a protector, which was a relief. But this house wasn't like any I had lived in before. I didn't just feel watched or hear creaks. I never felt this weird before. The first night, I didn't sleep because I kept seeing shadows. And I was a wannabe YouTuber with my friend, and this is incredibly relevant to the story, but me and my friend were doing fake YouTube videos and we watched the video back, and to this day we can't tell if it's saying 6'6" or sis. But it was a female voice, childlike. But looking back, the voice sounded forced. It wasn't any of us, and we were alone. My street was dead, and it was a side street nobody went down. Another time, I heard a male, as clear as day, say my dead name, which scared me to my core. As I was alone completely when that happened. I couldn't go into the kitchen alone at night because something didn't want me to. Then everything stopped. We left that town due to a severe abusive situation that I won't get into, and moved to a different town where things got even worse. This was the worst paranormal activity I had ever discovered in my life, or even went through. This was some conjuring house type of paranormal, and I wish I was over-exaggerating. This was a recently built apartment building, so I thought the ghosty stuff was gone. Oh boy, was I wrong. So, my grandma's 89 years old, and she had a bed for me because we had to leave all of our stuff behind due to the situation we were in. I say we, talking about me and my mom. When the bed arrived at our apartment, the worst feeling came over me. This is years after I discovered I was a medium. I don't remember saying this, but thanks to my mom, she does. I said out loud, this bed was used in the war times as an asylum bed. I have no idea why I said that. It was a metal fold-up bed with a thin piece of mattress on top. I declined using it, and we made a makeshift bed using pillows. We kept it in the closet. Our worst mistake was keeping it. The first night I had sleep paralysis. One of the worst sleep paralysis I ever had. Couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't talk. I was stuck. Felt like it for hours. It was like someone was sitting on my chest, killing me. That's the best way to describe it. The next day, my sister, who was only a baby at the time, kept staring at the closet where the bed was. Me, being a medium and witch, I decided to put crystals around the closet so no evil could get through, not thinking what I was actually dealing with could overpower it. It suddenly stopped for a few nights after doing that, until one night. I was sleeping soundly in my bedroom, and suddenly, my mom barges in my room in a panic saying her boyfriend can't move, almost like he was possessed. Something was trying to take over his body. I grabbed my citrine crystal out of fear, as I didn't have a cross at the time. I went into their room, and his body, it wasn't levitating like the movies, but he was arching his back and shaking. At this point, I felt Adam's spirit near me, probably to protect me. I screamed loudly, "Get out, you're not welcome here." And luckily, it stopped. Her boyfriend doesn't remember what happened during that moment. Scariest night of my life via paranormal. None of us slept that night due to fear. We ended up getting a blessed holy cross to put on the closet door, and it worked for a bit. The closet door would shake and rattle, and the cross would be crooked due to the door shaking, I assume. Then my mom, who's the biggest skeptic, had a paranormal experience, which I believe 100% because the fear in her eyes told me it was true. It was around midnight, 1 a.m., and I heard a scream. I immediately get out of bed and run to my mom. She kept looking at the curtain of our balcony, saying she saw this skinny being with a hat. She described him as his bones were sticking out, and he was like a scarecrow without a crow. She actually ended up crying and trying to convince herself it was her mind playing tricks on her, till she saw the same thing again, but in her bedroom closet, staring right at her this time. Things like that started to happen about 2 years ago, so fairly recent. We found a different house, and we got rid of that bed. Now, the house we moved in 2 months ago. It is also severely haunted, but I'll make a part 2 when more things happen. Let's just say Adam is still with me, and whatever evil entity was at the apartment followed me here. I actually can't. I would give up. I would actually give up if every fucking place I went, it followed, like, it was always there. Like, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do at that point? I'm doing pretty good with my English. So, last story, we're gonna read it. This one is fairly long. This one says, something crawled at my grandma's bed. Excuse how bad this story is. I'm writing it on my phone at 2 a.m. Hopefully there isn't too many spelling and grammatical errors, but regardless, I hope whoever reads this enjoys. Hey, my name's Cal. I heard this story a while ago from my grandma and figured I would share it here. I did sort of write it like a book, so excuse the dialogue and stuff. I just wanted to add some ambiance. Anyway, my grandma's name is Tilly. Not her real name, more of a nickname. She's in her late 60s, and the story takes place when she was in her early 20s. My grandma told me a story about a trip she took with her best friend, who we'll call B, to another country. They were young and wanted to travel the world, so they saved up some money and hopped on a plane to Rome. They stayed in a pretty fancy hotel. It had been around for a long time, had a colorful history, that sort of thing. The first few days of their trip went by without any issues. They spent all day visiting some well-known tourist spots and some more unknown. My grandmother was rather rambunctious back in the day, so she would get, well, frisky with some of the locals. Thankfully, she didn't go into detail about her endeavors, but she did recall a pretty creepy detail from one of her sleepovers with one of the locals. I love your grandma. One of their family members had casually informed her that there was a shadow person attached to her. Clearly taken aback by the family member's statement, she asked for more information. Unfortunately, they didn't supply any more and kind of wandered off, leaving my grandma rightfully rattled. Figuring she was no longer welcome in the house, she left and headed back to the hotel. B was in the room when my grandma arrived back. "Did you have a good time?" she asked, looking up from her book. My grandma just stood by the entrance, unable to shake what the family member told her. "It was fine. Hey, have you noticed anything weird?" B quirked a brow. "What do you mean?" My grandma hesitated, ultimately deciding to keep what the relative said to herself. "Nothing, never mind." B seemed a little concerned, but she dropped the subject. They spent the next couple of days, their entire trip was about 2 weeks, relaxing and exploring some more without incident. The information about the shadow person was shoved to the back of my grandma's mind and was forgotten about. Well, come the last day of their trip, one of the creepiest things that's ever happened to my grandmother occurs. It was the last day of their trip, and they had packed their bags and were ready to head out pretty early in the morning to catch their flight. For some reason, my grandma was having a really hard time falling asleep. She couldn't shake that feeling that someone was watching her. B seemed to have fallen asleep without any issue, and my grandmother wasn't usually someone who had an issue falling asleep. So why was she now? My grandma opened her eyes and rolled to her side to see the time. 4 a.m. flashed on the clock, only a couple of hours before their flight. She debated whether she should just get up now since she was having a hell of a time falling asleep. But with how heavy her eyelids felt, she figured trying to sleep, even if it was just dozing off, was better than nothing. So with a heavy sigh, she closed her eyes and tried her best to sleep. Eventually, she managed to doze off a little and was in that in-between state where you're awake but dreaming. Suddenly, she felt something odd. Her blankets tightened around her like someone was pushing down on them. Weirder still, the bed shifted. Someone was very slowly crawling up, as though they were trying to avoid waking her. At first, her tired brain thought she was dreaming, but she could physically feel her body shift with the movement. She then thought maybe it was B trying to wake her up. My grandma did have a bad habit of sleeping through her alarm. She literally needed 5 or so different alarms going off back to back to back, otherwise she would sleep through them all. So she begrudgingly opened her eyes, fully expecting to see her best friend's face. Instead, she saw nothing. There was nobody there. Confused and very alarmed, she bolted upright and frantically glanced around the room. She remained as still and as quiet as possible. Aside from the gentle snores of her friend, there didn't appear to be anyone else in the room. She sighed with relief and looked over at the clock, only a couple of minutes before she was supposed to get up. She decided to turn the lamp on to slowly wake up B. The light spilled across the room and she turned her attention back to the bed. That's when she noticed something horrifying. It made her blood run cold. There, on the white sheets, were black handprints, like someone had oil-stained hands and left smudgy handprints and fingerprints leading up to her bed. B woke up from the light and turned to see what the source was. That's when she noticed my grandmother sitting on the bed, still as a statue and pale as a ghost. "Tilly, what's wrong?" She pushed herself into a sitting position, her eyebrows creased with concern. My grandmother wordlessly kicked off her blankets, quickly got dressed, and snatched up her bags. "We need to leave," was all she said before hastily leaving the room. It wasn't until they were in the air when she finally spoke up. The entire trip to the airport, waiting at the gate, getting on the plane, she was silent the entire time, too scared to say anything. My grandma revealed what had occurred in the hotel room to B, and what the relative of the companion said. B was a diehard skeptic. She always tried to find a logical reason for weird things that occurred. She said the handprints might have been from some makeup that my grandma forgot to clean off of her face. The thing was, my grandma was very adamant about cleaning off her makeup before heading to bed, something she still does to this day. But she swears up and down those handprints weren't from her, and whatever left them wasn't human. She hasn't experienced anything like that ever again, but I can't help but wonder what that weird relative of my grandma's companion was yammering on about, and what the shadow figure's intentions were with my grandma. Edit, I hope people enjoyed this. I went back and fixed some things, so hopefully it's a little bit better. I'm not really a writer, but I had fun typing this out. It's also my first time posting to the subreddit, so expect more stories. I have lots. I want to meet your grandma. I'm sorry that happened to her. Like, that's terrifying, absolutely terrifying, and I believe her. I'm with your grandma, but I need to meet this woman. She sounds amazing. That is all I have for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I actually have to go because maintenance is coming to check out my dryer. My dryer I've been living in this apartment since like June. My dryer has never worked. I just like air dry my clothes when I wash them. And so they're finally coming to look at it. Not finally as if like I put in a request forever ago. I just put in a request yesterday. So they're coming to look at it finally for me. Hopefully it's fixed today because I have a lot of laundry to do. So I actually really do have to go. I'm gonna ramble for like 2 seconds at the end, but yeah. If you have any other stories you want to share with me or the community, I will have my subreddit link down below. But I love you guys. I will see you in the next one. Bye! I got a new tattoo. I posted it on Instagram and Twitter. My tweet wasn't a great picture of the tattoo. It was like the best I could get the night of, because I got it with Brittany super impulsively. Like, I just went to the shop. I was like, tattoo me, baby. It turned out really good. It's like peeling right now, so it's like kind of ugly. But I'm gonna show you if I can. Can I show you? It's on my knees. It's on my knees. It's Pierce the Veil lyrics. It says, "Don't let me jump, don't let me fall." It's from Hell Above. It's like the very last like line in Hell Above. I love that song, and I just thought it was like a cool like phrase, like "Don't let me jump, don't let me fall." So yeah, I got that about a week ago, maybe like about 2 weeks. No, like a week ago. Definitely not 2 weeks ago. I think it was last Thursday. You're seeing this on Sunday though, so not the Thursday that just passed, but this, whatever. It doesn't matter. So it's in the gross peely stage right now, but I love it. I think it's beautiful. I've been wanting lyrics above my knees for a really long time, but I couldn't figure out what I wanted. I was gonna do something from One Direction. I still need a One Direction tattoo, but my sister found this, and she was like, this is like cool, you should do that. And it's perfect because Don't Let Me Jump, Don't Let Me Fall has the same amount of letters in it, both of the phrases, and so it like works out perfectly. So yeah, I'm super excited. I'm gonna like stand on this chair and try to show you better. Sorry I have ugly fucking legs and ugly fucking knees, but yeah, it says don't let me jump, don't let me fall. I don't know if it's backwards on here. It's in order though. I promise it's done correctly. But yeah, that's it. I gotta go, I gotta get my dryer fixed. They're gonna come in here. I was like, they just called me and I was like, oh, I'm working right now. Can you come in like 30 minutes? They're gonna come, they're gonna be like, what the fuck were you working? What were you doing? Looking like this? I feel like I look cute though. I don't know. Okay, I'm really gonna leave. I love you guys so much. See ya.